I never thought buying my dream ranch would turn me into a target. But when armed men in fake HOA vests showed up at dawn claiming they had the right to seize my property, they didn't realize one crucial detail. 20 years as a combat veteran had taught me exactly how to handle an ambush. Before we start the story, please comment down from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe. After 2 decades serving my country, all I wanted was a place to call my own. No more orders, no more deployments, just me and the wide open sky. That's why I bought this 80-acre ranch outside of Pine Creek. The moment I saw those rolling hills and the old farmhouse with its wraparound porch, something inside me settled for the first time since I left the service. This is it, I told the real estate agent. This is where I'm going to live out my days. For the first 6 months, life was exactly what I'd dreamed about. I fixed up the barn, got some chickens, and even adopted 2 rescue horses that needed a good home. My mornings started with coffee on the porch, watching the sun paint the hills gold. My nights ended with a cold beer under stars so bright they made me forget all the dark places I'd been. Then one Tuesday morning I found a sign hammered into my fence post. White plastic with bold red letters. Notice, property under review. Pine Valley HOA compliance required. I stared at it for a full minute. Pine Valley HOA? There was no HOA out here. This was farmland, miles from the nearest subdivision. I yanked the sign out, tossed it in my trash barrel, and figured it was some kind of mistake. That was my first error, underestimating how far some people will go when they want something that isn't theirs. 3 days later, a shiny white SUV pulled into my driveway, kicking up dust as it came to a stop. A woman stepped out wearing pressed khakis and a pink polo shirt. Her blonde hair was pulled back tight, and she carried a clipboard like it was a weapon. "Good morning," she called out, walking toward me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm Patricia Wilson, president of the Pine Valley Homeowners Association." I wiped my hands on my jeans and leaned against my fence. "There's no HOA out here, ma'am?" Her smile didn't falter. "Oh, but there is. We've recently expanded our jurisdiction to include outlying properties. We're focused on maintaining standards across the whole valley." Standards? I looked around at my clean barn, my well-maintained fences, my happy animals. What standards exactly? She handed me a thick manila envelope. "This contains our community guidelines. I've highlighted several areas where your property doesn't comply." Her voice stayed sweet, but her eyes were cold. "We'll need these issues addressed within 30 days. I opened the envelope after she left. Inside were pages of ridiculous rules about fence heights, barn colors, and acceptable rural aesthetics. According to their bylaws, my barn was too red, my fence posts weren't uniform enough, and my chicken coop was a visual disturbance. I threw the whole thing in my fireplace that night and watched it burn. The next week, more signs appeared, bigger ones stapled to trees along my property line. "Violation pending," and "compliance required" in angry red letters. I tore them all down. The neighbors started acting strange. Old man Jenkins, who'd brought me fresh eggs when I first moved in, crossed the street to avoid me at the feed store. Sarah from the farm 2 miles over stopped waving when she drove past. I found out why when I went to town for supplies. Flyers plastered on the community board showed a photo of my ranch with the words, "Non-compliant property, community risk," and a list of made-up violations. At the bottom, "Report suspicious activity to Pine Valley HOA Compliance Office." They were turning my neighbors against me, one rumor at a time. Things got worse a week later. I woke before dawn to the sound of a vehicle idling near my property line. When I checked, I caught glimpses of men in khaki pants walking my fence line with flashlights and clipboards. They scattered when I approached. That's when I called Sheriff Mike Hadley, an old friend from town. "An HOA?" Mike scratched his head when I explained. "Jack, there's no registered homeowners association in this county with jurisdiction over your property. Period. Tell that to the clipboard brigade that keeps trespassing on my land," I said. Mike promised to look into it, but I wasn't waiting for official help. That afternoon, I installed motion sensors near my driveway and set up trail cameras around the property. My military training was kicking in: secure the perimeter, maintain awareness, prepare for escalation. Good thing I did, because 2 nights later my front sensor pinged at 2 a.m. The camera showed 2 men in those same khaki pants and dark vests cutting my fence wire. By the time I got outside they were gone, but the damage was done, not just to my fence but to my sense of security. The next morning I found my water trough contaminated with motor oil. My oldest horse, Sergeant, was sick from drinking it before I could stop him. The vet bill came to $800 and Sergeant wasn't the same for weeks. When I showed Sheriff Mike the footage, his face darkened. This isn't just harassment anymore, Jack. This is criminal damage. He posted a deputy near my place for a few nights, but whoever these people were, they were smart enough to stay away while law enforcement was visible. What they didn't count on was that I wouldn't just sit and wait. I upgraded my security system with floodlights, alarms, and better cameras. I reinforced my gates and fixed my fences with stronger wire. If they wanted a war of attrition, they'd picked the wrong veteran. Then I got the letter. Official looking, delivered by certified mail. It claimed I was being sued by the Pine Valley Property Standards Coalition for willful noncompliance and aggressive resistance to community standards enforcement. The letter was signed by Patricia Wilson, HOA president, and included a court date 2 weeks away. Sheriff Mike helped me find a lawyer, Ellen Reyes, who specialized in property disputes. When I showed her the letter, she frowned. "This isn't a real lawsuit," she said. "The court listed doesn't exist, and this so-called coalition isn't registered as a legal entity. They're trying to scare you." "But why?" I asked. "What do they want with my land?" Ellen did some digging and found that 3 other ranches in the county had been targeted the same way over the past year. All 3 owners had eventually sold their properties at rock-bottom prices to a development company called Horizon Investments. "I think someone wants your land cheap," Ellen said. "And they're using this fake HOA to pressure you into selling." I wasn't selling. Not then, not ever. They came at dawn on a Tuesday just like in the old days. I was already awake. Veterans don't sleep heavy, when I heard the crunch of boots on gravel. 6 figures moved across my property, dark shapes against the gray morning light. They wore tactical vests, carried what looked like tasers, and moved with purpose toward my house. I didn't panic. Panic gets you killed. Instead, I moved to my security panel and watched them approach through the camera feeds. One of them carried a document in his hand, probably another fake notice or warrant. 2 others flanked him with hands on their equipment. I stepped onto my porch just as they reached my front steps, flipping on the exterior lights so they could see me clearly. The sudden brightness made them pause. "Morning, gentlemen," I said calmly. "You're trespassing on private property." The man with the document stepped forward. He was young, nervous, trying to look authoritative in his fake uniform. "We're here on official HOA enforcement business. You've been issued multiple notices and have failed to comply." "There is no HOA here," I said. "You know it, I know it, and the sheriff knows it. You have 10 seconds to leave my property." Another man, older with a beard, pushed forward. "We have authorization to seize non-compliant property under Community Bylaw 15B. He actually patted something on his belt, not quite pointing to it but making sure I saw it. I almost laughed. These people were playing soldier on my land, and they had no idea who they were dealing with. "Last chance to leave peacefully," I warned. Beard guy took another step forward. "You're outnumbered. Don't make this difficult." That's when I pressed the button on my phone. Immediately, floodlights blazed from every corner of my property. Sirens wailed from the barn and house. The men froze, confused by the noise and light. In that moment of disorientation, I moved down the steps with the speed and confidence that comes from years of training. Before Beard Guy could react, I had his arm twisted behind his back, his face pressed against my porch railing. I said leave, I told him, my voice low and steady. The others backed up, suddenly unsure. Their tough guy act crumbled when faced with someone who actually knew what they were doing. One dropped his clipboard and raised his hands. Then came the sound I'd been waiting for, police sirens. Sheriff Mike's cruiser roared up my driveway, lights flashing. 2 deputy cars followed close behind. I released Beard Guy and stepped back as Mike got out, hand on his weapon. "Everybody freeze," he shouted. The fake HOA squad stood still, suddenly very interested in the ground at their feet. Mike looked at me. "You okay, Jack?" I nodded. "Just some trespassers who don't know how to read no trespassing signs." The next hour was a blur of statements and arrests. All 6 men were taken into custody for criminal trespass, attempted burglary, and impersonating officials. One of them cracked during questioning right there on my property. "It wasn't our idea," he stammered. "We just needed the money. Patricia said it would be easy, scare the old veteran, make him sell cheap." Old veteran. If he only knew. What we found in their vehicles blew the case wide open. Maps of my property with entry points marked. Photos of my daily routine. A schedule of when I typically left for supplies. Notes about which neighbors I talked to and which ones avoided me. But most damning of all was a folder labeled Pine Creek Acquisition Phase 3. Inside were documents showing that my ranch wasn't the only target. 12 properties throughout the county were marked, with status reports for each. 3 listed as acquired. 2 as in progress. Mine was labeled resistant escalate tactics. Sheriff Mike whistled low. This isn't just harassment. This is organized. My lawyer, Ellen, arrived as the deputies were finishing up. She took one look at the documents and pulled out her phone. I'm calling the district attorney right now. This crosses into racketeering territory. The investigation revealed that Patricia Wilson wasn't just some power-hungry local. She was a paid operative for Horizon Investments, the same company that had bought those other distressed properties. Behind Horizon was a larger corporation called Greenfield Developments, which specialized in buying up rural land cheap and flipping it for massive luxury housing projects. Their playbook was the same everywhere. Create a fake authority, harass property owners until they felt unsafe, damage property to increase maintenance costs, isolate them from neighbors, then swoop in with lowball offers that seemed like the only way out. The difference? They'd never targeted a combat veteran who refused to be intimidated. The case took 6 months to build but only 3 days in court. Patricia Wilson and the CEO of Horizon Investments, Martin Greaves, were both charged with conspiracy, fraud, criminal harassment, and property damage. 5 counties discovered similar schemes operating within their borders. In total, 17 people faced charges. I testified on the second day, laying out the timeline of harassment in calm, precise detail. When the defense attorney tried to suggest I was paranoid from military stress, I simply played the security footage showing his clients cutting my fence and poisoning my water trough. The courtroom fell silent after that video. Even the judge looked shocked. Patricia Wilson was sentenced to 5 years. Martin Greaves got 8. The men who raided my property received lesser sentences in exchange for their testimony, but none walked free. The best moment came when the judge ordered Horizon Investments to pay restitution to all affected property owners. My share covered new fencing around my entire property, security upgrades, and sergeant's medical bills, with plenty left over. But money wasn't the victory I cared about. What mattered was that my neighbors finally knew the truth. Old Man Jenkins showed up the day after the verdict with a fresh apple pie and tears in his eyes. I should have known better than to believe those flyers, he said. You fought for this country and then you had to fight for your own home. I'm ashamed I didn't stand by you. I told him the only thing that mattered was that the truth had won out. Within weeks, the community rallied. We formed a legitimate rural property owners association. Not to control each other but to protect each other. We set up a phone tree to alert everyone about suspicious activity and created a system to verify anyone claiming official business on our lands. A year has passed since the trial. My ranch is peaceful again. Sergeant has fully recovered and even lets me ride him on occasion, something the vet said might never happen again. My chickens lay enough eggs to share with neighbors, and my morning coffee on the porch tastes better than ever. But I don't take anything for granted anymore. My security system stays updated. I still check my cameras every night before bed. Old habits from my military days, once faded, are now part of civilian life. Last month, a rancher 3 counties over called me. He'd heard my story and was experiencing similar harassment from a supposed Valley View Community Standards Board. I walked him through securing his property, documenting everything, and contacting his sheriff. 2 weeks later, 3 people were arrested trying to post fake violation notices on his land. Sometimes I think about what might have happened if I hadn't had my training. If I'd been someone else, an elderly widow, a young family, someone without the skills to protect themselves, I might have become another acquired marker in their files. That's why I started the Rural Property Protection Network. We now have members in 5 states, all sharing information, legal resources, and security tips. When developers want land, they should buy it fairly, not bully people off it. My military service taught me that freedom isn't just something you fight for overseas. Sometimes the battle comes to your front door, wearing khakis and carrying a clipboard instead of a uniform and a rifle. But the principles remain the same. Stand your ground, know your rights, and never let intimidation win. Last week, a for sale sign appeared at Patricia Wilson's old house in town. Nobody's buying. Turns out, people don't forget when you try to steal their neighbors' homes. As for me, I'm staying right here. Every morning I walk my fence line, check on my animals, and breathe in the free air of the land that's mine, fair and square. No fake HOA will ever change that. Some fights are worth fighting. Some ground is worth defending. And sometimes the skills you learn in war are exactly what you need in peace.